There it goes. Welcome to the book release reading for Chapbook Award winner Switchboard Shift by Kathleen Fagley. And there's a beautiful cover of that book. And the reading from MoonPath Press, Sally Albiso runner-up, To Walk the North Direction by C.L. Downing. I'm Lana Heckman Ayers, managing editor for both presses. And I really appreciate this wonderful showing of all of you here to listen to poetry in this uneasy time in history. Poetry can be a companion and balm, even at the most difficult of times. And I think that's something you'll experience from listening to both our poets today. First up is C.L. Downing. She's an accomplished, prize-winning nature photographer who uncovers beauty everywhere, including the landscapes of decay. You should check out her gorgeous website at cldowningbooks.com. She has won the Academy of American Poets Prize, and CL's work has been featured in Word and Image, North Coast Squid, and Timberline Review, among others. She lives in a forest by the sea in Tillamook, Oregon. To Walk the North Direction is a lyrical masterpiece and her debut poetry collection. Welcome, CL. Please unmute and read for us.
Thank you. You took me a bit by surprise because Kathleen and I had agreed that she would go first, but this is very workable. To walk the north direction is to take an account of one's life and look back and take the long view of it. The first poem I'm reading is called The Language of Wind. And in it, it makes a reference to being a child of the north direction. And anyone born in the winter months between late December and late March is also a child of the north direction, per the Native American medicine wheel. That said, I'll read The Language of Wind. I am the child of the north direction. I am also called the shadow walker. To walk the north direction is to know and hear the voice of ancestral guidance, messages light as vapor trails. Listen, listen, listen for the calling, the whispers through the trees, calling you home, 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 to unchecked cautions and unbridled joys. I am arias lifting from the small of a back, sex that pulsates and courses through veins, dance that is propelled and driven. I have a maverick's disregard for convention and shun rumination. I do not simply appreciate Earth. I am its direct relative, responsible for its well-being. I am alive, aho. Am I to continue reading?
Oh, yes, please continue your reading.
Oh, apologies. I thought we were switching back and forth.
Is that something you'd prefer to do, or?
Fine either way.
Oh, okay.
The next piece is called Summer Loom. And if I was lucky enough to grow up on a beach just south of Cannon Beach, it was in a very, very rundown, ramshackle cabin. But for a child of 7 or 8, it was heaven. Summer Loom. I would stretch an August day until it was thin as unspooled threads, till the weary sky went wheat gold and faded into the cradle of crimson, hailing surrender to the evening. Perched in the arms of a grand hemlock in the timbers of Neocony Mountain, I watched the months, moths and bats perform their twilight dance, flitting past the porch light beam, hearing the quiet of birdsong, the rise of a faraway owl hoot, the distant tease of waves whapping the shoulder of the shoreline, then running away. Wood smoke drifts and ribbons through the strands of alders and fir, mixing with brine-laden air, telling me my father had fired up the stove to quell the grip of night's chill. I knew I'd be called in soon. In those last precious minutes, I gathered up the sounds and perfumes, the way other children put fireflies in jars. I laid them under my pillow so that I could spool them together enough to weave into dreams. The next piece is called Kalando, which is a musical term for long, slow fade. And this happened as I had been homeless in Massachusetts. And for the people who are in homeless or in Massachusetts and New Hampshire right now, you know that that's a bad thing to do in January. And I ended up later going to a transition house. And this is one of the ways we kept ourselves sane. Kalando. We raced time to beat the 8:45. Biker Lori, Trisha the Witch, Gay Joe, KC, and me. The whistle rolls up off the river's surface and floats across its own echo. The five of us scramble up over the gravel incline with grass blades poking through, climb and reach our respective posts. The din of the 8:45 thunders under our feet, vibrating our very beings, coming within a hair's breadth of our bodies when we pierce the air with our Friday night ritual.
See how somehow you muted.
Yeah, it said the host muted me. Sorry. Okay. The din of the 8:45 thunders under our feet, vibrating our very beings, coming within a hair's breadth of our bodies when we pierce the air with our Friday night ritual of ear-splitting, throat-chafing screams. The last car has not even passed before we have spent our demons, and we share self-congratulatory pats. We are between worlds, the five of us, but on Fridays at the track's edge, we heal 1,000 years in the 40 seconds of that whistle. It's fully dark and nearby lights from the coffee house called the filling station beckon to us. We redirect, still smiling, still feeling the thunder. I have 3/4 in my pocket tonight. Besides a cup of Joe, I get to hear Frank Sinatra's New York, New York on the jukebox. I trail a step behind my tribe before entering and listen to the night. I hear the trestle rumble fade on the water, the whistle that keeps sounding like a distant dream of Satchmo hitting a long, high note. I've held a number of jobs in my life. And Part of my training is as a mental health therapist, and I worked as an LPC for quite some time. But in the last 6 years of my career, I ended up working at an all-male prison as their counselor. And it was an extraordinary experience, to say the least. Many people are under the impression that a minimum security prison means that the offenses are low level, and that isn't the case. If someone has served a great deal of time and they are down to their last 4 years, they're allowed to go to a minimum security. And I had remarkable experiences there, and this was right after I finished. Gods and prisoners. Prison life is a cacophony of sound, not like the sounds of comfort, nor like the soar of music or laughter. Nearly all the sound is abrasive, rough, angry, directed at disturbing the silence. That elusive silence drives many of the men into a desperation far more frightening or intimidating than which racist group they have to partake in. Mexican mafia, brood, Aryans, Indian pride, Irish pride. Everybody's got pride in their mouth, but no one has it in their spirit. The noise relentlessly jarring, filled with ugly words that are spat rather than spoken. There is no relief, no ability to come up for air. The occasional scream lands like a fist punch. And locked doors are used to beat against. God is not found here. Chow time is a series of calculated moves done like sharks circling minnows. Chatter upsurges and has the pitch of tension laced thick throughout. It becomes a din just prior to a fight or a shakedown. A strong arm will send someone in to try and establish themselves, to take another person out. It's called a torpedo. One can feel one's own heartbeat unconsciously keep time with the rising clamor. Prison is about living with a scream in your stomach that will never pass your lips. It slithers and coils around what used to be you. Even for me, who only served as their counselor for 6 years, like floodwaters climbing stairs, surging a caution that grew into a chronic guardedness. My spirit tamped down and cornered like a starving dog. I returned to the sea and lifted song up, let guards down. Water cleanses, baptizes, nourishes. My need for the water greater than my need for people. That and the thick of a wooded forest where rain can pour over me, wash me, rebirth me, and let me hear the true world, the world of hope and resilience getting resuscitated. It's in nature that I find the heartbeat silence that defies hurdles and resurrects my spirit, quieting the chaotic voices of locked men and absent gods. The next piece is 5,000 arrows. I'm part Blackfeet, and the number of women, Indigenous women, that have gone missing and unaccounted for and or killed in the last few years is astounding. So that's what prompted this. 5,000 arrows. Tribal winds and quicksilver sails sail howling through the plains, carrying the voices of 5,000 candles, snuffed, discarded like garbage, disappeared like snowmelt, shawled with generational abuse, an easy mark for predatory white men. But my sisters at the plains and the pueblos, Chinook winds and Black Hills mountains, you who endured callous tongues and careless hands, mirthless laughter, weaponized words and murderous hearts, you will not be silenced. In our remembering, we rise. We are your voice now, along with Brother Wind. Should they drown us out, we'll dry off and sing. Should they bury our spirit, we'll break the husk and rise through the soil. Should they kill the woman in us, 10 million more will follow. Speaking truth for those who've been beaten into submission, holding hope for those whose arms are weary, cradling justice until integrity can be restored again. Hearts gentle, souls fierce, compassion strong. We are your arrows, and our flight shall not be denied. Sorry, I lost a piece there. There we go. When I was living in Florida, I angered some Klan members, and I did not realize that they were still active. It was 1983, and I had just left the Army. And so it was very eye-opening and startling for me that they were around. And that's what this piece is about. I lost Jesus. It's called Are We Done Yet? I lost Jesus in a laundromat, an outdoor one at the sunny South trailer court in Orlando, Florida. Had nothing to do with laundry. The only similarity being how fast things pile up. I prayed as a little girl not to smell my flesh frying on the coiled electric burner, that my caregiver's husband wouldn't yank off his belt, double it, and crack it whip-like before coming after us. As a young adult, I'd prayed with the holy rollers, their sweaty palms pressed against my face. I put holy water on my wicked forehead. I genuflected, bowed, and knelt, took communion, and fucked a choir master. I tried to braille my way to God, overlooking my caregivers, my childhood, those collective indifferences, combined with what happened in the Army, what happened in Korea, what happened with AIDS, what happened last night when Klansmen surrounded my trailer. So I'm washing clothes today, preparing to leave town. I sit here allowing my 1,000-yard stare to fall on a window of wet clothes flopping circles in a dryer, and I realize I haven't got a prayer. And that does it for mine.
Thank you so much, CL, for that powerful reading.
Thank you.
Truly
And thanks
powerful.
to everybody who's come, and Lana, I appreciate it.
Now I'd like to introduce for you our next reader, Kathleen Fagley. Kathleen Fagley is a pushcart nominated poet whose first chapbook, How You Came to Me, was published by Finishing Line Press. Her work has appeared in Nimrod, Cutthroat, The Stillwater Review, and elsewhere. In addition to having worked as a switchboard operator, as her title implies, she taught poetry and creative nonfiction at Keene State College in Keene, New Hampshire. Having moved from Connecticut in 1974, she continues to make her home in Keene with her husband, Paul. Kathleen's prize-winning chapbook, Switchboard Shift, allows us all a vivid look inside the vulnerable and chaotic experience of an operator answering emergency medical calls within the environs of a hospital. Please welcome Kathleen Fagley. Kathleen, unmute and read for us.
I think I'm just going to read these poems, and the context of the poetry will, context of the language will help you with some medical terminology that will become apparent as I read. I have to say that this job was the most transcendent job I've ever had. I didn't have high expectations for it, but it demanded of me a level of empathy that I think was really good to exercise within myself. I had come from an MFA program, so I was ready for this. And I'll read my first poem. Getting ready. Atomic and Greenwich Mean Time do not reconcile on my board. Am I 7 minutes late or 4? I choose Greenwich Mean Time. I have straddled that line. Memories of the observatory and Queen's hunting ground puts me in an English frame of mind before the hello voice reaches me. I position the mouthpiece, earpieces, and metal band slips on silky hair. My problem is that I have this pain behind my right testicle and I only have one. I suggest fast track as an option, faster and less expensive if he feels it is an emergency. I add a caveat. There is always a caveat. You will need to be triage, of course. That word again, triage, French for separating out. I think of culling. I apologize for this. I was so worried this would happen, and it has. So I'm going to drink some tea. I think of culling tiny stones from lentils. If we follow our script, if our astronomic signs are propitious, I will have time to answer questions and pronounce each word clearly. Supplying the missing parts of the sentences, reading the ellipses, dash, punctuation marks into the voices before they cut me off or before I escape with one keystroke, sending them away to another extension, most likely an automated voice. Slow down and take a deep breath, I tell myself. There are 12 lines stacking up in a queue. I use my first name, but never to the doctor who always asks for me to stay on the line until he reaches a real human being. Text feels. Words light up, then digits flash before I hear the voices. A man with stomach pain. A woman blew out her knee. Another I have to tell to speak up. Her baby hasn't moved for 24 hours. She is 7.5 months pregnant. 8 hours of this, and I feel as if my ears are stopped up with water. I feel the pain of these voices. The doctor leans against the wall between 2 rooms. The alpha pager flashes her number and text I entered in a tiny field of white. Baby hasn't moved in 24 hours. Second call back. Dr. M is driving away from the hospital and will not come back for anyone or anything. I continue to enter his messages into his alpha pager, numbers and names. When he is done at 7, he will erase them all and float free as I will after my shift, hovering over this field of tangled nettles, fallen tree limbs covered with fungus, upturned roots, lightning-scarred bark. Then rising higher, we will see pools of water, streams, and meandering rivers we never knew existed. The narrow path I followed below, hacking my way through underbrush, careful where I placed each foot, looking for pieces of open sky. First code. Sunday quiet pours in the front door like honey. My limbs feel heavy, eyelids close. Then the code phone jangles, red light pulsing. The receiver becomes alive in my hands. I handle it awkwardly as if it were a writhing snake. Security stat, adolescent wing, the voice commands. I exchange code phone for the switchboard handset and speak into its mouthpiece, repeating these words. Security stat, adolescent wing, pronouncing stat with a hiss, a command like stop, now, resist. My voice goes everywhere, to every unit on 5 floors, to bathroom stalls, doctor's sleep room, nurses bent over a computer, the empty meditation room. In the mental health unit, I imagine a young girl scrunched in the corner of her hospital room, yells, "Fuck you," at my voice. So we had a lot of characters on the weekend, and that's when I worked, when the staffing is not what it is during the week. And one of our primary characters was a security guard. Security. Our only guard is belligerent after his evening in the ER. He should be taken in a field and shot, referring to a man he guarded all night on a standby. He tells me police are no better than social workers. I'm thinking better than security guards who are not social workers with a bent for violence. He opens doors on weekends for the courier who arrives with an iron box, for the teachers of classes, yoga for pregnant women, siblings of infants, teens court, stop smoking clinic, nurses who need supplies. Where are you? I ask, speaking into the radio. Then I hear his heavy breathing. He's running between floors. Will I have to call a code on him? I hope he answers and is not in a dead zone. Code red, which, by the way, is probably the most important code in a hospital. Color cards that you'll sometimes see the people wearing. A code red is in reaction to a fire damage, possibility of a fire. A room of events set in motion by a smoldering rice sock, warming in the microwave on the ICU unit. Code red, South Building, 3rd floor, ICU unit. 3 times I announced the code into the tan headset, 2 times on the radio, once into the pagers. I cannot call it back, despite the nurse's request. The code red will be executed to its conclusion. Doors close on the floors. Heavily suited firemen emerge from their fire trucks. The security guard waits at the front door. The engineer resets the alarm, an hour from start to finish, after which the rice sock will be draped over a nurse's aching neck. Panic button. Occupational health has one, the registration desk, orthopedic office, all of which are closed nights, but our office, open 24/7, does not have a panic alarm. A man who looks like he just rolled out of bed is doing a walkabout in the lobby, coming closer and closer to my glass window. How can I call security on the radio without this man seeing me? I am panicking in my office without a panic button. His mouth is moving, a chant, perhaps, prayer or a string of obscenities. If I keep on my headset with a loose-fitting earpieces and pretend to answer calls, he may leave, which he does, right out of the front door, walking into the frigid winter air with no coat on. Tonight, the security guard feels threatening. He lingers in my office after a routine check, standing behind me, waiting for me to turn, for me to acknowledge his presence. I want him to leave, but he won't. He comes closer. I tell him finally he's requested for a standby in the ER. Only then does he leave the office, slamming the door behind him. I hear lifeline calls. I hear the subtle click before the alarm sounds. This is a lifeline operator. Are you all right, Virginia? My voice is loud enough that the entire lobby can hear. A small voice answers back from some distant room. It sounds as distant from the earth as the moon. Her voice, young sounding for a 95-year-old, complains. They are always testing me, even in the middle of the night. Another voice is silent when the signal comes in. Has she fallen? Is she dying? She lives on a country road 25 minutes from here. I read her medical history, a heart attack, 10 medications, and 2 responders I cannot reach. Mutual aid will send an ambulance. When I finally look up, a man is standing at my glass window. How long has he been waiting? Sunday evening, the lobby is dark. 22 hours, 40 minutes, 5 seconds, Greenwich Mean Time. I open the window smudged with fingerprints and he blurts out, "My wife just died and I need to reach our children. Where can I get cell phone coverage?" While this is happening, I had this job. My father was dying. So concurrent with that, I was dealing with his his slow dying process. He had heart failure, and I think it took him a year to pass. The vigil. I come close to kiss your forehead and smell roses. Your eye opens, revolving in its socket without focus. A shade of color not your own, bluish brown like a polished stone. Behind this eye, trauma resides in a home that is shutting down. The caretaker closes off rooms one by one until there is one chamber where you will spend the night. How did you do that? I lean on the keyboard and hit a combination of keys by mistake. Nothing I could ever replicate. My screen is sideways. I have to turn my head sideways to read it. Impossible. I've never seen anyone do that, another operator giggles. Another morning, I cannot read anything, even with my glasses on. Am I going blind? How can I finish my shift? Panic sets in. Maybe I could go to the after-hours clinic and ask about the sudden loss of vision. When the young man I'm relieving notices I have a lens missing, it lies on my lap and I replace it in the frame gently. Last Sunday, I had 2 headsets wrapped around my neck. Ready for Sunday morning, he quipped. He programs the computers, cruises the internet on his overnight shift. He is very cool. I am not. Voices
But
shuffling through the wire.
I need to be able to feed the cats and put on my walking clothes and so forth.
Should I go on, Lana?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if anyone is unmuted, but I don't see anyone unmuted. So I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone seems to be muted.
Of course, I'm not muted.
All right, well, please continue.
Thank you. Voices traveling through the wire, through the headset, vibrating string across cochlea, bones, and hammer, translated by the cortex into words. I supply the missing parts, decipher the caller's pauses into commas, dashes, or ellipses, where we both take a breath, or that question dropped into the middle of a sentence when I least expect it, an afterthought, spoken in a soft voice, so I almost can't hear it, but it is important. The caller who asks it acknowledges a possibility. The cancer has returned. The pain under the right scapula is not indigestion. The headache is not a migraine. I become a reader of voices, and when I hear my own coming back to me from the speakerphone, it sounds as if it belongs to a snotty teenager, not my own. This poem is about harvesting organs, and it's called Harvesting. An OR tech suited in blue holds a bag of ice. He is harvesting organs from a donor and needs a key to the morgue. I guess who it was. He died on 4:45 on a Friday afternoon, 25 years younger than I am. His skin is rolled like sheets of parchment. Cornea is punched out before the sclera turns black. There's a small window of time to work in the garden of the body. The sclera is the tough white fibroid outer envelope covering all of your eyeball except for the cornea. Stat is a life interrupted, a word set apart in a sentence. When I speak, I pause before and after. The fricative s morphs into a plosive t, like gunfire, tongue behind the teeth, the open vowel cut off by a second round of gunfire. Stat is a possibility hidden in every admission, routine surgery, a prank on a calm April afternoon, to careen over a waterfall in an inflatable pool. 2 college students hear the churning of water in their ears, a woman's voice calling a stat, waking them to their own nightmare. By 10 a.m., I've called 3 codes. Respiratory stat punctuates the air with exclamation. Dr. K to the stat lab. OR team for stat C-section. The RN first assists are off their pagers. One is bowling, one is shopping, the third sitting in church. I keep dialing numbers, leaving messages. Uteroscopy is not stat, but it is urgent. Likewise, the lap appy. Tell them to come in at ASAP, the doctor snaps when I ask. After the surgical team assembles, quiet returns to the hospital. Although I'm not allowed to say the word quiet out loud, it's a hospital taboo. I return to my oxbow in the river, now flat water, and follow the river to the mouth of the ocean, listening for the hot foghorn, waiting for a break in the morning fog. Lana, you wanted us to save one poem?
Yes, let's finish the reading with one poem each.
Okay, so I'll finish with that poem. Late shift. The hospital has 1,000 thresholds, each door a station of the cross, each patient a pilgrim traveling their singular way of sorrows. Phones rest in their cradles. An operator tethered to her station opens a line to hear the hum of the phone, then severs the connection. 3 a.m. and the video cameras scan the dark corners. 9 screens play emptiness, save for the Wolverine who stalks the hallways. Closed doorways mean nothing to him. He brings the northern cold like tiny knives working under their skin. Staff put on their coats and hats so they can do their work, avoiding his shadow. Thank you for your attention, and it was a great honor to read to you. And I just want to say, Lana was terrific to work with. She is so calming and so professional. I'm sure she's gotten a lot of phone calls from people at their wits' end, but she was wonderful. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I second that. It's a privilege to work with her and her guidance. It's amazing because it makes you feel like you're capable and able through the whole process when in fact you're being guided very well.
I know.
Oh.
Hand holding. Thank you, Lana.
It's an honor to be the publisher of the work that you have written. I mean, both of you are just phenomenal poets, and it is my distinct honor and privilege to put this work out into the world. So thank you for allowing me that opportunity. I really appreciate it. And CL, did you have one last poem for us before we open it up for the audience to, if they want to ask questions or make comments?
I did have a short one. It's called Lasting, and it hopefully it speaks for itself. My spirit migrates like swallows returning to some haunted core in me. Ghost having left an odor of fetid decay from an unknown source. The swallows fly away again, chittering over unshared finds. My vulva tightens, rallying between terror and defiance, valor and surrender. The thundering rush of waves in my earshot, a profound reminder that even bodies as great as oceans plummet and crash upon the shores and manage still to go on.
Mm.
Thank you both for such powerful, beautiful readings. I'm just going to start with a question for both of you, and then we'll see if anyone in the audience has any other questions. You both write poems out of incredibly emotionally charged situations. And I just wondered if the process for you is difficult. Is it, somewhat cathartic? How would you say writing these very, very charged poems feels to you as a poet and writer?
I know for me, because it's very charged, you have to find a vehicle to express that emotion. Because if you you know, if you come to the project and you're saying, you write about something that really is difficult and you don't have that distance from it, I think it makes it not as appealing as a piece of work.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, that, like Kathleen, I also work at an emergency hotline, very different though from what you did. Mine was emergency child abuse. And you can't come home and tell anybody the stories. Nobody wants to hear it. It's inappropriate at any kind of gathering. And so it festers inside you. For me, it festers inside me if I don't find some place for it to live besides my heart. The process is usually much easier than the actual event, but sometimes it takes me to the event and I need to be in the woods or feeling the ocean air. And that's why a lot of the pieces go back to a lot of my pieces go back to ocean or woods or something in nature that helps act as a
Mhm.
balm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. I know as a poet myself that it's really difficult, I think, to know how to shape these experiences into something that becomes a balm, that becomes healing, both for the poet and the listener. And I think that you both do that so beautifully. You give us an experience of sitting with the trauma, sitting with the pain, sitting with the difficulty, and being a guide for it throughout the work. And I think that's such a beautiful gift.
Yeah, I
And
don't want to speak for, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I don't want to speak for Kathleen, but I know for me that in some cases, the harder a piece is, like the piece around the Ku Klux Klan took me many, many years to write. I wrote about the trailer court a lot, but I didn't write about the actual incident because it was such a force that undid all humanity kind of thing. So there's a correlation between when I can write about an incident and where it affected me in my life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, sometimes I have the same experience. Sometimes it can take years and years to write a poem. You know, working on a poem about someone, who passed away of a very horrible illness took me over 20 years to write. I
Like,
understand
exactly.
completely. Yeah, so that's a wonderful point. So I want to open things up to audience members just to say hello, say anything they'd like to the poets, perhaps ask a question. Feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself, raise your virtual hand. Oh, here, I see Sue Ellen right away. Sue Ellen, please unmute.
Oh, I just want to say those were just such powerful readings and of such profound experiences. And thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, Sue Ellen.
Yes.
And I see Tammy Fox raising her hand.
Hey, Seal sister, how you doing? It's so fun
Hello.
to hear you. Love you much.
Thanks.
And Chris was raising her hand.
I would second everything that everyone said in the chat too about how powerful the poems are. I also wanted to note the details, such well-observed details. Kathleen, your details of the experiences that you witnessed in your position there at the switchboard, and then also CL, some of the observed details both of nature and of interactions with people. Powerful and at times heartbreaking. At the time, I'm imagining you didn't write down those details. You might have journaled later.
what are some of the ways that those details came back? Were they just seated in your mind and your heart because of those experiences? Are they things that came back when something else was happening later? You were working on a poem, for instance. I'm just curious about that process. There are such wonderful, and as I said so many times, heartbreaking details. Kathleen, I think you're muted.
So there'd be times in which it was very quiet at the switchboard and I had time to write notes down while I was there. I mean, the first law is HIPAA that guides what you share and what you don't share. I mean, I wanted to make this situation as anonymous as possible so no one would say, oh, that's my hospital, or try to figure out who is who. But it was, as I'm sitting at the switchboard with a pencil and paper, I'm writing down details because I'm not a nurse, I don't have a medical background. And then looking up the names of certain things that would reappear in the hospital because there's certain things that are quite similar, like a laparoscopic appendectomy. So there's some things I got to be knowledgeable about. And by the end of the experience, I asked them if I could attend an autopsy. They must have thought I was crazy, but I really wanted to see that. I was very curious because the body is so important in this whole piece. And there's pieces that I didn't include that would have showed that also.
Your phrase, what was it? The garden of the body, which someone else mentioned in the chat. That just spoke to so much of what you were writing about.
Yes, and then there was something that I read that I started to get very emotional about, and I've read that poem before, and I've never been emotional about it. And it was about my father, and I couldn't almost get that line, and that never happens to me reading poetry, but it did today.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I think someone else had a question.
I did.
Yes, Maggie.
Yes, I wanted to say, I thought all of the poems were very powerful, but I particularly related to Kathleen hearing some of the specific things that people call about, because I imagine, I'm a physician myself, and I imagine what those calls are like as the hospital operator, because particularly the one you said where the baby hasn't moved for 24 hours. I have a horrific visceral reaction of my own from what I know as a physician that probably indicates. And they were wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks, Maggie. All right. Were there any other questions? I'm looking for hands. Hard to see so many people.
I had something.
Yes, please go ahead.
So first of all, I love poetry and I love CL dearly as a friend, and I've known her for several years, and it was just so I'm just bursting with pride and admiration for what she's created. They're just beautiful, beautiful pieces. And I was thinking, I enjoy poetry, but I've never in my life been able to experience a poetry piece and hear the author who created it and like a little blurb and like kind of background after each piece, and just hear at the end how the creative process kind of took them, and how that worked. It's just, I feel very privileged to be a part of it. And I was thinking that, wow, I've read a lot of poetry, but I haven't really had the opportunity to hear the author speak to each piece and kind of go over how they arrived at each piece or kind of their process. So a wonderful, wonderful job, CL. Kathleen as well, your pieces were also very beautiful. But I'm just very, very proud and very, feel very privileged to experience it. So very nice job to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you for being here. I think Carol Bouchard also had a hand up.
Yes, I wanted to make a note to CL. There's something I certainly have not experienced a tenth of what you have in your world, in your life, except that we share an inclination to turn to the natural world. What I find astounding about yours is that your attention to the natural world is both escape and nourishment in a deep way, because enumerating what grows is not enough. But it seems to me that if you were to recall a big moment, does the natural world help you as a footnote to put your hands within it, and then the background experience becomes more real to you? Or how does that work when you are about to recall something hard to write about? That's a terrible question. Just come up with an answer.
Kathleen and I both share that, I believe. I think it's the nature of people who do a lot of emergency kind of work or have a lot of emergency situations. I'm going to try and be very brief, but when I was in Korea, there was a really awful thing happened there. A number of things did, but one particularly. And my roommate took me to a monastery, a Buddhist monastery. And before you could enter, you had to put your head on the ground and hold it there. And my intention was to do that, get up and go in the monastery and see what it was about. And when I put my head on the ground, it was like the world sucked me down and filled me up. And the grief that I was feeling so acutely had like completely balmed over my blood. It was amazing. And from that time on, that gift kept reincarnating itself because I went out of my way to go find it. When situations got bad or I started to stop believing in humanity, that's when I went and made sure that I made a physical connection with the world. And it is very conscious. Sometimes it's accidental because I'm just running away. But the conscious part, yeah. And thank you for being here, all of you.
Wow, thank you so much. It's been such a magnificent reading, a powerful reading, and I'm so appreciative of our poets, Kathleen Fagley and C.L. Downing, and so appreciate all of your attentive listening and all of your contributions to the reading. Poetry is only complete when it has a listener or a reader, because poetry is a conversation between all of us. And so thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you'll support our poets by reading their collections. They're available from local booksellers, from Barnes & Noble online, from Amazon online, and of course from the poets themselves. We have another fabulous reading happening on Sunday, April 7th, and I hope you'll join us then to hear poets Sarah Stockton and Jill McCabe Johnson, who are both MoonPath Press Sally Albiso Award finalists with their new collections. But until next time, I want to wish you peace and poetry, and may you find poetry everywhere you look. So goodbye for now, and thanks again.
And thank you to all the people who came to support Kathleen and I. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my husband.